I wish y'all could see my bedroom. My husband walked in here and he said, I don't know what you're doing in here or what kind of games you're playing, but I'm in the living room. I'm like, I'm playing television.
We are conducting very important business here.
I knew you were going to have your pretty bookshelf, and my books are in disarray. So I didn't want to have to rearrange all the books today. So I just came in my bedroom, pulled a painting off the mantle. There goes the light.
We'll give it just another minute or so. Just make sure everybody gets in.
And Hallie, you are welcome to shout out Park Road Books. And if people want to buy a copy, you have plenty.
We have plenty autographed right here.
And
I don't know if you can see.
yeah, yes.
Okay, I think we'll get started now because I don't know about you guys, but I am so excited to hear this conversation. So I know it's going to be good. I saw you on an Instagram live. I think it must, I don't even know what day it is. It's Wednesday. So I think it was last week. It popped up. So I'm like, I need to watch. So I'm excited about this conversation. Okay, so first let me introduce myself. I'm Hallie. I'm the events coordinator at Park Road Books. We are, as I said, really excited to have Leslie and Tracy here today. They are going to be discussing Leslie's new book, The Secret of Rainy Days. I have a copy right here. So how this is going to go. I will introduce the two of them and then I'm going to let them take it away and have a great discussion. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A on the bottom of your screen. There should be a Q&A. I already see there's one question there, so I know it's going to be a good night. So the Q&A there, and I'll be monitoring, and at about 7:45, we'll start answering the questions and put Leslie on the spot. So you didn't know that, but yes, you will be put on the spot. Okay, so I just wanted to let everybody know that her book is available at Park Road Books. We have wonderful signed copies. You can see right here. They are available for pickup in the store, curbside pickup, or we can ship if you like. Just give us a call, email us, however it's easiest for you, and we can make sure we get the book to you. And I know that I probably don't have to say this, but I have to, just because it's a Zoom recording, just a little policy of the bookstore, that there's a zero tolerance policy in regard to harassment. And by attending this virtual event, you agree to our code of conduct. Anyone violating these rules will be expelled from this event and all future events at the discretion of the organizers. But I know that's not going to be a problem, but like I said, I have to say it. Okay, I know you've heard enough from me, so I will introduce Leslie and Tracy, and then I will let them take it away. So Leslie, who you all know and love, is the author of Before Anyone Else and The Secret of Rainy Days. She has earned a BA and MA from Auburn University and a JD from Samford University. Leslie has been accepted to the, I hope I don't mispronounce this, Sewanee Writers Conference, and has studied with Alice McDermott, Jill McCorkle, and Richard Bausch. Growing up in a small Alabama town, think To Kill a Mockingbird, Leslie became intrigued by people. Everyone had their own unique stories. She currently resides in Charlotte, North Carolina. And our moderator, Tracy Curtis, is an award-winning author, speaker, and former syndicated humor columnist for the McClatchy Company nationwide. She wrote over 500 columns for the Charlotte Observer and published a Humor Me trilogy of gift books, collections of her columns from the last decade about the imperfection of motherhood. Trophy Mom, Beach Bummed, and Holidays were released in 2016. and Holidays was awarded a national 2016 Independent Publisher Book Award. In 2017, Tracy was announced as a top 10 finalist in the Anna Leffler Irma Bombeck Humorist in Residence Writing Competition that drew over 400 applicants from 6 countries. A former CNN producer, Tracy enjoyed a 15-year career in radio, television, and film. She speaks to literary groups and business organizations, teaches humor workshops, and also has performed stand-up at the Comedy Zone. All right, Tracy lives in Charlotte, North Carolina with her husband, 2 sons, 3 stepchildren, and when she's not writing, I'm sorry to say, she is unloading the dishwasher. All right, so Tracy.
Somebody has to do it.
It is
Somebody-
bad form
Unfortunate.
for the moderator to show up the guest. I mean, Lord, Tracy.
No, I was cracking up. I have no education. You had all those degrees.
Well, Bay was a Zibby nominee, so I have been nominated for something. So, but not
Yeah.
all that. So, anyway,
Yes, you have. Thank you
Okay.
for that introduction.
thank you,
Pleasure.
Hallie.
You guys take it away.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And hello, Leslie. I mean, this is the only way I can see you. You've been so busy. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to come chat about your beautiful new book, The Secret of Rainy Days. We have a very exciting announcement at the end of this, so please stick around because you're going to hear something here first before anyone else. Leslie's got some exciting news. So I wanted to give Leslie a chance to give you a brief synopsis of the book, because so often we do these things and we're talking about a book that maybe some of you haven't read yet. The great thing about The Secret of Rainy Days is that it has some really interesting universal themes, and that's what we're going to talk about. But I wanted you to hear a little bit about what the book's about, and then we're gonna have a really good discussion. So Leslie, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book?
Well, there were 2 separate ideas sort of came. One was I always wanted to write about the transformative nature of friendship. It happened in my life, and it happens almost daily in my life. And the other thing that was curious to me, and that, you know, if something is curious to you, then you need to find out why it's curious. But so the thought of curiosity was, I wanted to write about this childhood friendship that was not like BFF, lovey-dovey, but sometimes difficult and challenging at times. And so I wanted to, and then one day the 2 ideas merged in my brain, and the line that kind of was born was, her name was Wynn, and she did at everything her whole entire life. And that was the first line to come for the book, and I'm like, leave it to Wynn to be the first character on the page. And I thought, well, I don't even need to describe what Wynn looks like, because we all have Wynns in our life, and we know what she looks like. We know she has lucky dust. We know that once she has a baby, she's wearing her clothes the next day. And, you know, we hate her, but we need her, you know. So, and she needed a foil. So Little Bit, or Nina, became her foil. And I like the interplay on names. You know, you've got Wynn, which is so winning and successful. And then you've got Little Bit, which is petite and it's less than and all this. So I thought not only would their friendship be uneven, but even their names would be sort of a contrast. So I like that. And I don't know about you, Tracy, but my friends, a one-on-one is a little bit different than 3 friends together. And so I thought what would be interesting is to bring another friend into the mix, and a friend that Bit really got along with, much to Wynn's chagrin. So that was Avery. And it's sort of the friends we choose and the friends we need, and how that kind of that plays out in this book, and it's mainly a book is a coming of age story told through Bit's eyes.
Well, it is interesting because I think so many of us worry about what our characters look like, but going back to that, you really didn't do these detailed descriptions of your leading ladies. You kind of let their actions paint the picture for the reader. Was that a conscious choice?
Yes, I wanted readers are smart. Readers are much smarter than I am, and I wanted to give them quirks and personality traits, but I didn't want to make them have long brown hair or long whatever red hair. I wanted the reader to say, this is what Avery looks like to me, and this is what Bit looks like, and this is what Win looks like, because I think the reader has a great imagination, and it's our job as a writer just to give them enough information and personalities and quirks to go, I know what she looks like. So I didn't want to describe them too indelibly, because I wanted the reader to be able to make conclusions on their own for their own self. So,
well, it's funny because it wasn't that long ago that I finished the book, and I read it and I feel like I know all these people, but now that I think about it, I didn't even really imagine what they looked like. I was listening to what they were saying, and I was watching what they were doing, and I was absorbing, how I was feeling about what they were doing. And it's interesting now that I think about it. Like I really didn't think about what they looked like. It just didn't matter. And I have to say, as someone who's, written a book, I'm not sure I would have had the confidence that I could pull that off. I think that really says a lot about you as a writer.
Well, you can tell me that all day, but I feel some ways like the village idiot, and I need to just allow my characters to take the reins and run with their own story and what they say. And I didn't really have firm ideas what they look like, but someone here, Judy Goldman, said we need to know if they chicken salad, or I think she said pimento cheese or something. I don't know what she said one day, and I always thought that seems right to me. We need to know maybe how Win would order at one of these places that they have lunch, which is like the everyday. So I feel like we could almost get there, what they want to eat and what they might say next. And sometimes I even like to turn that on its ear and, think, oh, we know what Win's going to say now. And then she says something exactly opposite. And yet in Win's mouth, it makes sense because she makes it make sense. And so I love character. To me, characters are king. And so you've got to have a story and you've got to have characters. And if you have those two pieces, the other stuff doesn't the other stuff takes care of itself.
It's funny you said that about do they eat chicken salad or pimento cheese, because sitting here, I can tell you Bit eats chicken salad with, and I remember how you described it, white pearls of onion. And I don't think I'll ever look at chicken salad the same again, because I'll always look at the white onion as the white pearls of onion.
Yes.
And having read your other book too, before anyone else, it had a lot to do with food because of, she was a restaurant designer. But I noticed in this book too, you do talk about food a lot, and you describe characters through food, and you have such great analogies. But there was something that you said, and I had marked it, and I'll just bring it up now because we were talking about the food thing. You were talking about a part where Bit had engaged a friend of hers, Carter, and you said she walked in, and you said, I suspected something right off the bat. Carter wore his habits like he wore his freshly starched shirts, comfortably and consistently. He always ordered a cheeseburger, medium rare, tomato, no lettuce, fries, and sweet tea. But here he was studying the menu like it was the bar exam. And I thought that was so great because I was like, oh, she got the food in there. We know exactly what Carter eats, but it told us a lot about his personality, and the fact that he wasn't ordering his usual meant something was up. And you just do that. Like, it's just so brilliant how you do that. And I always get hungry when I read your books.
That's good. And I like to do a lot with walks in this book, like the way when, she had 3 walks. She could stroll in, she could saunter in, or she could storm in, and that sort of set the tone. And Carter had his own way. He didn't walk, he was never in a hurry, because why be in a hurry when you know exactly where you're going? And I think that summed him up just, well, in my mind, that was the way I wanted to sum him up. So you didn't need to know what he's sort of an anti-hero in the book because he's bald and he's short and whatever. But I don't want to turn people off, but I like it. I'm drawn to anti-heroes, and I'm drawn to maybe not the most handsome in the room, and probably that's a personal choice on my behalf. Handsome men scare me, but so it was either through their food or through their walks. And
well, it's those little details that stick with us. And you're right, and I need to remember that too. I think sometimes when you're writing something, there's a tendency to want to spell it out, or you say something and then say it a second time because it was so good the first time, or you wanted to make sure they got it the first time. And I love the confidence you have in your descriptions. So staying with when, you mentioned something called lucky dust. So tell everyone what lucky dust is. Who has it? Do you have it? Do you know people who have it? And how does it work?
Well,
I want some.
I think you have some. And I would have said up until this point, I had no lucky dust, but it was also important in, I don't think I'm breaking any confidence here. I dedicated the book, since it was a book about friendship, I dedicated it to all my friends, and my friends are my lucky dust. So while maybe my life hasn't been quite synonymous with lucky dust, my friends are my lucky dust. I mean, all these people that are showing up all over the place, I'm so grateful, and I mean, people came down for the launch, so I don't necessarily think I have it in like beauty, and I describe it as it is an intangible, and you either have it or you don't. It's kind of like confidence or charisma, and you just have it. And Wynn had it, and I have, because I've studied people, and I studied people all my life, I have friends with lucky dust. And I wouldn't say, it's not a bad thing to have lucky dust. I mean, I think I look at you and I'm like, have you looked in a mirror? Because you have lucky dust. And so, I'm like, oh, I've got all these wrinkles. I'm so old, but I do have lucky dust in that one area of friends. And so if the feelings in the book around friendship resonate as true, it's because it is true, because my friends are my lucky dust, and I couldn't get by without it. But it really does, as I say in the prologue, makes your life a little bit better and hardship a little more blunted. But we all know hardship does come even with lucky dust. So I wanted to even explore that, even when Betsy throwing out this theory, she's a coming of age, she's young, and so her lucky dust theory is put to the test. So I liked that too, that we think lucky dust is going to take you all the way, and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does. So
Interesting.
But-
Yeah. May we all have a little bit of lucky dust?
well, I think everybody on here is got a little lucky dust, because we all have, I know all these people and they all have good friends, and so, and they're all mine. So yes, may we all have lucky dust.
Well, and I want to shift gears to Avery, because she's sort of the heart and soul of the book. It comes as no surprise to anybody that's on this call tonight or Zoom that, it's apropos that you wrote about friendship. You have so many friends who genuinely just love you to death. And what I love about you as a friend is you really work hard on your friendships. You nurture those friendships, and you're always you show so much gratitude for those friendships, right down to having thank you parties for your friends. And I love that you dedicated the book to the tribe. I didn't know that till I went to your book signing. So I was, it just makes perfect sense that you wrote this book, and I'm so glad that you did. And I'm glad you did it in a way that kind of analyzed those friendships and those complicated friendships that, sometimes are really hard and challenging. And, it's like, can't live with them, can't live without them, type thing.
But don't kick them out of the galaxy.
Don't kick them out of the galaxy. So yeah, speaking of the galaxy, so Avery's the peacemaker, and she says that friends are like the solar system. They're people in your inner and outer orbits. And I love this little part that you wrote. It's early on in the book. I'm not giving anything away, but Avery says, I love rainy days. They keep our secrets safe. And if we're sad and want to cry, it is like heaven is crying along with us. She came over to me and hugged me. And I think, that sort of says a lot about Avery and what her role in this book. Speaking of people in your inner orbit and out of orbit, what do you think causes people's place in the orbit to change over time?
It could be circumstance, like if you're going through something really horrible, and maybe somebody else has gone through something horrible, but they're on your outer ring, but they all of a sudden zoom in because they have been through that same situation. And I won't call this person by name unless she wants me to, but when I was going through a divorce, I got to be really good friends with one of my best friends. Sorry, she lived up the street, and half the time, if I didn't have any water, she'd let me go come up to her house and take a shower. She brought me over to her house, let me stay at her house when I was feeling low. And she had this beautiful guest room that I hope will become mine again soon. And her husband has taken it over as an office. So that sort of put her on that inner ring, and she stayed. And so I think circumstances, and sometimes if there's some maybe competition or something, and maybe like with Win and Bitch, you just sort of needed to, she needed a little distance from Win for a little while. She had to put her on the outer ring, but Win was a stubborn cookie, and she was not going to stay there. So she inserted herself back, and she was not going to be Uranus. She was going to be on whatever planet is circling closest to the sun. She is going to be that planet. And so, but I think it's circumstances. And I think, if we're going through something challenging and we think a friend is going to show up and they don't, we may have to it may disappoint us, so that we might have to put them out a little bit just to protect our own hearts. And so I think it's kind of important that our friends do sort of form a solar system of our life. And it's very important not to kick anybody out, because you never know when a particular friend you're going to need or want or miss, whatever that circumstance is, whatever the circumstance is.
Okay, well, I just have to say that guest room is still available to you whenever you want it. And I'm glad, yeah, spoiler alert, that was my guest room. And you know, I kind of forgot about that. We were going through, I guess I had already been through my divorce, you were going through yours, and you're right. I think that is when we really got to be close friends. And yeah, I kind of forgot about that. I mean, I always think of, you know, meeting you at the gym, and I thought we always kind of bonded over writing. I don't know how I forgot 2 divorces. I guess
I don't know
you sort
either.
of blank these things out.
Can I
Um,
get that pill? I want that pill.
it's all the lucky dust. It's blinded me. So of the 3 girls, Wynn, Avery, and then tell us a little bit about Nina, also called Little Bit. And I love how you described Little Bit. Her name's Nina. Her grandmother is Biggie, and so she inherited the nickname of Little Bit. They called me Little Bit, and my slight stature only secured Biggie's justification. She was the grand, imposing mansion, and I was the tiny outhouse tucked behind her. And in the same vein, you sort of described that same sort of idea when it came to her mother. Let me see if I can find that one. You had talked about the tension between her and her mother, and you described that also kind of using a reference to home. Mama and I wouldn't breach each other's personal space with something so intimate as a hug. Yes, we were family. Yes, we were blood, in much the same way as a detached garage is still part of the house. And again, like the way that you drew those parallels to home and use those beautiful analogies, you can feel the size and the distance in both generations of women. So talk a little bit about Little Bit and tell us a little bit about Nina.
She is, I think I think her mother was a mystery to her. And people ask me, oh, but Leslie, you loved your mother and da da da. And so I'm like, yeah, but love, this pure love does not make a good story. You gotta have tension. So I thought, you know, that the mother had her own issues going on, and Bit was such a handful. She was Miss Harem-Scarum. She couldn't keep up with anything. And I think the mother just thought, you know, the grandmother was big in every sort of way. So she thought Biggie could take on Little Bit and kind of, you know, mold her into the right Southern woman. Of course, Bit kind of, that was not a great idea, because Bit went up against her Biggie at every moment and every turn, regardless of what it was, whether it was a church or whether it was for, you know, whatever. And so I wanted Bit to kind of not be the most lovable character, but a character that was relatable, and that you would want, you go, oh, I've had feelings of inadequacy, and I've had feelings of this. I wanted Bit to incorporate sort of an everyman, because Avery was so sweet. It was sort of like, you know, Avery was so sweet, and Bit was, I mean, Wynn was so bossy that, and then Bit was just trying to find her own way. And, you know, it was growing pain. She was trying to yearn. She was yearning for her own identity. I mean, that's why she went to New York, because she was the only Nina Barnes in-law in the phone book. And she wanted to be the only one, because in the South, I don't know if a lot of you all can relate, but the one question we Southerners never get is, what is your name? Because everybody knows your name. Everybody knows your people. So when Avery asked her name, she took it upon herself to re-identify herself as Nina. And Avery called her Nina, and all her friends called her Bit, but Avery called her Nina because she had never gotten that question before. And I like that because nobody asked me what my name was growing up.
Well, and I like that you've created, more complicated characters, and we all have complicated relationships with our mothers and our grandmothers, and especially in the South. And I love that you touched on that too. So there's another big character in this book, and that I'm just gonna use a broad term, and that's just home. And Bit is trying to find home in her personal life and her relationships and in her friendships. And I'm just curious, you have a fictional town in Alabama. You're from a small town in Alabama. So tell us about E-Rob, how you came up with E-Rob, and how you came to connect with that small Alabama town.
My small town is in my DNA. I wouldn't live there anymore. I love Charlotte, but it's in my DNA. I mean, I go to the same Starbucks. I go, I do all the same, all that. I've created a small town here in Charlotte. And so it's in my DNA. It's what makes me me. And I escaped it. I wanted just to be a writer. I didn't want to be a Southern writer. I wanted to be a person that wore a black turtleneck, and whatever. But it's like my Southern accent. I couldn't leave it when I crossed the Mason-Dixon either. So, it was forget it. But I came up with E-Rob because E-Rob, Alabama does sound like a real place. And I love Oprah and Harpo, and I wanted something that sort of, conjured up sleepy or boring. And so E-Rob spelled backwards is bore. And I just thought that would be perfect for Bit, because Bit would want to leave a place that spelled bore. And she goes can you believe we live in this, dusty little town that spells bore backwards? And so she's very down on the town, and I think she's just really not down on the town so much, but she's looking for herself. And she thinks she's going to find it in New York. And home it's almost a religious thing for me, Tracy. I mean, there's a couple of lines in the prologue that I can't read because I do tear up, because home does mean a lot to me. And I think you can't you can take the town, you can take me out of the town, but you'll never take the town out of me. And so I'm always gonna be home. And I liked it that not only Bit, but a lot of the characters were looking for home and they weren't content until they got there. And I liked that.
I always think of that quote, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, we all want to leave home, and, and maybe we think it's going to change us in some way, but then you get there and you're like, oh, I'm still me. And like you said, it's still, it's in your blood. You can't escape it, and nor do you want to.
No.
So what would you say are some of the benefits and some of the challenges of growing up in a small town like Roanoke, where you grew up?
Everybody now, I mean, I was always I always had things follow me, oh, you're Mr. Paul's granddaughter, or you're Miss Elizabeth's daughter, or you're Miss. So I already had, it was like having a label. It was oh, you're so and so. And I was I just want to be Leslie. I loved my grandparents. I loved my mother and daddy, but I wanted just to be me. And I felt like it was really almost suffocating to kind of crawl out from under all that weight. But the thing that was suffocating was also the best thing, because anytime I went somewhere, people would say, "Oh, you're Mr. Paul's granddaughter," and he was like Atticus Finch. So it was a source of pride. So it's usually the things we hate that are the things we end up loving, and so that's really it's that same answer.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm from Greensboro, so it's not. I mean, smaller than Charlotte, but I mean, I love going. I'm so glad my parents still live there. I love going home, and a lot of my friends are back there. So a lot of times when we do these talks, like people kind of want to know like the process. And there's one thing that I don't know if a lot of people know this about you, because a lot of my friends who are writers who know you, and when I talk about you, I say, well, she doesn't type. And then they go, well, how does she write books? And I say, well, she dictates it on Dragon. And I mean, there are so many people like that. I thought they just knew that. You never really talk about it. And I asked you ahead of time if I could bring it up, but I think it's fascinating that you literally have to sit in front of your laptop and say the words out loud. I know for me, a lot of times, people like to type because it kind of goes through your brain and into your fingers, and then you can edit and do things as you go. But explain to people what you have to do when you are actually writing a book using only your voice.
And Michelle asked what Dragon was. It's a computer dictating software that you install on your computer. And maybe some people don't always know this either. I had a stroke at birth. I always say some people had a stroke of luck. That would be the lucky dust. So I just had a stroke at birth, and it affected my right side, and so I can't type. And then my doctor said, well, your good side's not really good anymore, so you can't type. You can sign books, but you can't type. So I found this dictation, and then I learned to specialize in Southern dictation, which was like a 2-day thing on how to train your dragon. So anyway, I dictate. I wear a set of headphones. I look like air traffic control, but I'm really just dictating. And I sit at my computer and I dictate a sentence. And sometimes I go, oh, that sounded so much better in my head. I wish it sounded good on the computer, but it's like an Etch-a-Sketch. The old Etch-a-Sketch, you would turn it and would. So basically I just dictate and the words come out on the computer screen. And I have dictated all my books that way. And amazing. I used to dictate. I used to write, but then when the White Coats interceded and said, no more, that's when I learned to dictate. So there's some challenges, but it allows me to do what I love and what I need to do, which is write. And so
that's amazing. I mean, I think anyone out there who's like listening to this right now, like can't imagine like actually like dictating a book. And then so if you write a line that you didn't like, how do you get rid of it? What do you have to do?
Scratch that.
Scratch that. Yell at it.
It sounds like I'm trying to kill somebody. Scratch that. Scratch out. But that's what you do. And sometimes I'll dictate a sentence and I'm like, ooh. And so I scratch it. Some ways I edit as I go, but then like if I dictate a second sentence, take a second pass at a sentence I'm trying to nail down and it doesn't work quite right, I tend to go because I'm going to lose the flow. So it's taken me a while to sort of figure out what works for me and what works, like if I'm in the zone. I try to just keep going, whether the sentences are good or not. I just keep going and then I go back and edit. So I do that in the afternoons.
Judy Goldman just said, and to everyone, if you don't know Judy Goldman, she's a beautiful writer. She's got several books out, including a memoir. She said, because
memoirs. She's got several, and she's got one coming out.
Scratch that, memoirs. because you dictate your books, the writing is so natural, so you, and that's a very good thing. So yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like that, it is so you. And I wish I'd love to have this conversation that I want to have with you right now with Judy also. Maybe she can weigh in and answer the question, plotter or pantser. So for those of you that don't know these writing terms, and when you're writing anything, a story or a novel or a screenplay, you may be what's called a plotter, which is just what it sounds like. You plot your story out, and you know what the beginning and the middle and the end is, and maybe you know how you want it to end, and then you're writing to your ending, and you outline it and you plot it. Now, I'm a plotter. And then there's also pantsers, where they just sit down. And I swear to God, I love Kimry Martin's in my writing group, and I watched Kimry Martin one day sit in my kitchen, and she wrote, "Is there a doctor on the plane? 7 words you never want to hear." And she read it out loud to us, and she goes, "What do y'all think of that for a start of a novel?" And we're like, "Oh, that sounds great. What's your book about?" She's like, "I don't know yet." I mean, she was literally going to sit there and just start with that and then write her novel. So that would be called a pantser, and she does it beautifully. So my question to you is, are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a hybrid. I try to, I may know how it starts and how it ends, but there may be detours along the way that the characters take all on their own. I kind of let them have the reins. And my editor Ezra, once this book was turned in, and we were getting through some particularly difficult patches of it, he said, "Leslie, it's beautiful." He said, "Sometimes we take the characters where we want them to go, and sometimes they take us." And so I think I'm a little bit of a hybrid. Like, I sort of know where I want the people to end up, but they're going to take some detours along the way. And I think we all know from detours, whether it's in life or on journeys or whatever, sometimes the best roads are detours. So we just have to let it, we just have to let it play out. So.
And again, I think it just you've been doing this a long time, longer than your publication dates show. You've been at this for decades.
An overnight success for about 30 years.
It was the lucky dust. But again, it's sort of like that goes to your strength. Like when I compare, how we differ in that, somewhere along the line where I was doing on my plotting, I listened to a podcast, and it was a screenwriter, and he said, "If you know how your story ends, then you're not doing your job." And what he meant by that was, to your point, you have to let the characters take you where they want to go. And I always hear like writers say, "Well, I know that she's going to kill someone, but she hasn't told me how she's going to do it yet." And I'm like, "Who?" And they're like, "My character." And I thought, gosh, these people, like, their characters actually speak to them and lead them down the path. But it is funny when you stop plotting and you kind of have to like move the story forward. Really, that's where like the cool creative stuff happens. And I know for me in my novel, like 2 people appeared that were never part of my story, but I needed them to do some things, and like they got me where I wanted to go. And it's because I trusted the process, and you seem to really trust your process. There's something in screenwriting where they say you have to have a whammo moment every 10 pages, like something that wakes everybody up. And I love how like sometimes like not a whole lot of like there are not a lot of whammos in your stories, but you get into it, and then when something does happen, all of a sudden you understand how much you know about everyone, how much you care about everyone, how much you fear for them. And like that's like the brilliance of your writing, because all of a sudden now something's happened and you know who everybody is, but now you're trying to figure out, well, how's everybody going to react? And when they do react, because you've peeled the onion so slowly, you know, either we're like, oh, of course they're going to react that way, or it's a surprise, which is even more fun. You know, all that to say, it shows a like, I mean, it's beautiful the way you create these characters and they really come alive on the page. And it's so interesting that we don't even know what they look like. And then you put them in a situation where we're surprised as a reader, like how much we care. It's like you didn't have to like blow up a building to like keep our attention. It's almost like the tension is there because you're leading us up to something that's just, in a lot of cases, very unexpected. And then we want to see like what happens to these people that we've fallen in love with. And again, like it takes so much confidence as a writer to write like that. And it just comes naturally to you. I mean, before anyone else was the same way.
Well, thank you. But a good day in the chair is when I'm surprised. You know, I love to be surprised, like wow, okay, if I break for lunch, I'm like, oh, I like that, So, and when I go to bed, I'm thinking the same thing, surprise. So I love that. I love to be surprised.
There was something else I was going to say. We were talking about process. We were talking about before anyone else. Let's peek at my notes here. I lost my train of thought. So I'll go on to the next thing. And I'll come back to that. I'm sorry, everybody. I lost my train of thought. Speaking of rainy days. Okay.
Like
so,
we having tonight. It was
like we're having tonight. It just gave me like a total brain fog. Tell me what a rainy day is for you. Is it a good day? Is it a sad day? Is it a good writing day?
It could be all of the above. I can be happy, and then I can, something may make me think of Elizabeth, or whatever, or something, and I get sad. But I like rainy days, and my philosophy is probably akin to Bit's philosophy, which is I like rainy days because the secret of rainy days is they expect so much less of us. And we don't have to run a mile in the rain. We don't have to do yard work. We don't have to, we can just, we can, it's a pause day. We can take a day to just, exhale and just, so I go pretty nonstop, as you know. And so I like a day that I just can kind of go, so yes, I like rainy days. Before anyone else had a central of a rainy day. So I do like they're in every scene. So in every book.
Okay, great. Park Road Books is telling me that we have some questions. They're probably wondering if I'm okay, because I totally forgot what I was asking you. Yes, let's get to some questions. Or is she? Oh, there she is. Okay,
yeah,
so you're gonna take it. Thanks.
Yeah, there's so much to ask, and this conversation is so fantastic. But I wanted to get to some of the questions that your audience is asking. So the first question, Leslie, who do you feel is the main character of the story? And then a second follow-up question is, who is your favorite character?
Ooh, who said, whoever asked that was perfect. I don't know. I didn't plant that, but I think I probably relate a little bit to Bet, just because she was always searching for herself, and I was a searcher myself, and curious about my own self. But I think Avery is the heart of the book. I think Wynn had the biggest trajectory of the book. Like, you think one thing about Wynn in the beginning, and probably by the end of the book, you have an entirely different opinion of her. The soul of the book belongs to a man, and it's Carter, because so many of the little interactions involved him. And so he sort of was the goodness in the book. And so I like that each friend provided an element to the book. So
And who was your favorite? Could you pick a favorite, or
oh my,
they were all your favorite? I know that's a tough question.
Know, Wynn, you know, of course she's I can feel her even here internally saying, of course I'm your favorite, right? And I'm afraid to say she's not my favorite. She's kind of afraid to beat up on me, but and yeah, I acted like these are real people, but I liked writing about her. You know, I guess because I knew Bette so well, I liked writing about a girl with lucky dust, but yet she couldn't get the best friend because the best friend had more of a friendship with another girl. And so I think having this perfect life was a really high wire act for her. And so I love sort of exploring that. So maybe, I hate to say it, but Wynn was my favorite just because because of the trajectory. I did so much. She went the furthest emotionally. It's always emotionally.
Yeah. Okay, great. No, that's fantastic. Okay, so we have some other great questions. This one, everybody wants to know, what are you writing next?
That was the surprise announcement. We have to wait for that.
Okay. So we can do that at the end. If that's your surprise announcement, we'll do that at the end. Let me go to the next question. What are you reading now?
Oh.
I am reading a really great book, which Park Road carries. It's called The Personal Librarian. And it is about it's a historical fiction about the librarian to J.P. Morgan, who curates his own personal library. And she passes, and it is, I haven't gotten into it. I've just finished with Hamnet, and that has been one of my favorites this entire year, is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, which is about William. It's a historical fiction again. And it's not that I love historical fiction, but these two books just stand out. It's about the fictional life of William Shakespeare and his son, who died of bubonic plague. And it's not as depressing as it sounds, trust me, but it's beautifully written.
Okay, yeah, I've heard great things about that one too. Okay, so the next question, what has been the most surprising thing that has happened to you during your first in-person tour?
Oh dear Lord, that is, I mean, so much, Hallie. I'm a really introvert and a little not quite ready for prime time. And last week I was at Parnassus with my friend Kevin Wilson, and we've been friends for 20 years. And so he asked me, I'm going to be able to say it now, but he asked me the book that had the greatest effect on me. And it was Autobiography of a Face by Lucy Greeley. And she happens, it was about her going in the world with a disfigured face, and I go through the world with a disfigured body, and it just really blew everything open for me. And she happens to be the best friend of Ann Patchett, who owns Parnassus, who's never there, but who happened to be there that night. And I got really, like I did tonight, a little bit choked up. And afterwards she said, can I give you a hug? She said, you are, I'm not gonna say what she said, but anyway, she was so sweet to me. And I was so amazed by her generosity. And then at last Monday night, I was nominated for a Zibby, and I went to New York, and it was like, lights, camera, action. And so it was pretty thrilling to be in New York after about a decade. So
wow,
anyway.
a lot of great things happened on this in-person tour. Okay, so we have another question. At what point during your life did you decide you wanted to be a writer? What were your favorite books and authors when you were growing up, and did any of them inspire you to take this journey?
I have always written. Now, those books, I wrote a book at 16 called Weekend in New England, with encyclopedias and Barry Manilow's same song in the background. Because I lived my life so much in a wheelchair, I couldn't do a lot. So I enjoyed writing, and my mother was a librarian, and she typed my books, and I heard things in my mother's laughter when she would read my stuff that was like affirming, like, I love you, because she couldn't say I love you. I didn't know that, Michelle. Anyway, I'm responding, talking to the people. Anyway, so I think I've always been a writer. I just didn't know I could do it professionally, but I mean, I still am not really doing it. I am doing it professionally, but I just thought you had to be anointed, by the gods of Eudora Welty to be a writer. And the influences, which I told Kevin, were Carson McCullers. I just think I felt like she was speaking. She reached into my heart and grabbed it and shook me. So I just love her work. And so if somebody compares me to her, then I'm so good with that, because, but I don't, if they compare me to anybody, I'm fine, because then that means I'm getting compared to somebody. So
there's something you've been saying on tour that I love. You said, you can call me a writer, you can call me an author, but
from Monday to Sunday, call me a storyteller, because that is what I want to be remembered for. Two things. I want to be remembered as a good friend, which that's why this book is important to me. And I want to be remembered as a storyteller. I envision my sunroom as a giant wraparound porch, and I'm just telling you a story about these friends. And this is what happened to Bet, and this is what happened to Win, and this is what happened when Avery came. And, so I love to be a storyteller. So I'm not lofty. I don't have lofty, to be an author. I just want to be a storyteller.
Well, I remember what I forgot that I was trying to say was that you and I both try to just write what we know. And I think, to Judy's point, and along the lines of being a storyteller, and just the fact that you dictate right out of your heart and soul, you're just always telling your truth. And that's why you are such a beautiful, natural storyteller. You write what you know, and you just do it so well and with so much confidence.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Michelle. I know a lot of these women from various things. They always, and I'm so grateful that they show up, because I feel like nobody's going to show up for these things. I figured it was just going to be the three of us, and so it's nice when actually people show up. So
it's wonderful. It's been a wonderful night. And I hear we have a surprise.
We do. We do. We do. I love all my bracelets, and I'm wearing a pink bay bracelet that my friend Sherry gave me. But then I'm wearing a second bay bracelet that's black that my friend Melissa Walker gave me, because in June of next month, next year, 2022, after everyone else is making an appearance. And that is the sequel to Before Anyone Else. And it is about marriage, motherhood, and murder. So,
Sounds fantastic.
well,
Love it.
your lips to God's ears, Hallie, because I don't, writing murder is a little different animal. And so I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the journey in it, because it goes back and forth in time, and I wanted to explore sort of a young new love versus a weathered love, and why, and the past is prologue, and why we make decisions, because so much of our decision making is informed by our past. And so that is what it's about. It's also about forgiveness, and how forgiveness is so hard sometimes, but necessary. So these characters did not leave. They just decamped, and they would not go until I finished their story. So that is my big announcement. So
That's a good one.
It is a good one. Everybody is excited and they cannot wait.
well, good. Support your local bookstore and
Yeah.
go, if you haven't bought it, go out and buy it. Or if you call Park Road Books, I'll go down and sign and personalize it if you want me to. And they can send it out. And always write a review, please, because reviews allow us to write more books. So that is what I've learned from smart people like Tracy. I'm not such a good person, a smart person like that. So
Well,
This
thank
is
you.
so fun for me. Thank you for having me, and thanks to Park Road Books and Leslie. I mean, I always love hearing from you, and I hope everybody's learned a little bit more about you as a writer and your process and your wonderful books.
well, thanks, and thanks, Hallie, to giving up your night to do this and moderate, and thanks everybody for showing up and being so gracious and generous. I really appreciate it.
And hopefully next June, you said 2022, hopefully we
Yes.
can do this in person with your new book.
It's not very far away.
I
just
know.
turned into edits on it. I'm like, gracious, y'all need to give me some rest. So anyway, so I'm doing
Big room
next
on my
week with-
shelf.
yeah, Jill McCorkle and I are doing Flyleaf next week via Zoom, Hallie. So
Mhm.
I have great friends that are in the lit business, so I'm grateful.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And thank everybody for coming by to spend this night with Leslie and Tracy. I hope you had a good time and read the book. It sounds absolutely, I have my copy right here, and it sounds absolutely amazing. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, Leslie.
Thank you, Tracy.
I
Thanks,
loved it.
Hallie.
Bye.